Hey, good day, rising generation. Before we go into our podcast today, just a brief announcement for you. Coming up on the 3rd of October 2016, we're going to be launching a campaign for the Rising Generation Leadership Series. 5 books that I've written based on the interviews we've done with the guests on the podcast over the last 12 months or so. So from all of our interviews, we've found that there are 5 big challenges that leaders have said they've faced on their way to significance. And around those 5 challenges, I've written like 5 books which give you the challenges and the solutions, an amazing tool for any leader out there. And so we're trying to get as many of these books sold as we can through our campaign. And for every copy of the series that we sell, we're going to give £4 away to our charitable work in Ghana, which will allow us to reach young people in the rural areas of Ghana, giving them leadership training, soft skills training, and much more. All right. So I really, really would love your support on that. Please check out the link in the podcast show notes here. And also go to the website, which is www.publishizer.com/The Rising Generation. So guys, we love your support on that. Please share this with your friends and loved ones. And let's take it all the way. Thank you for your support. God bless you. Hello and welcome to the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast with me, Errol, Lawson. If this is your first time joining us, we want to welcome you. It's great to have you with us today. The Rising Generation exists to inspire and equip Christian leaders from all walks of life, from all around the world, to fulfill their God-given potential. By hearing these interviews with established, internationally recognized leaders, we hope you'll be inspired to connect the dots between where you are now and where it is God has called you to be. Now, to receive notifications about future episodes, simply subscribe to our podcast show by either on iTunes if you're on Apple, or on Stitcher, the Stitcher app if you're on Android. You can find out how to do that just by going to our webpage at www.errollawson.com/podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with your friends, share it with your loved ones. Hopefully they will also benefit from the content. Guys, thanks for listening. Before we go into today's show, here's some news for you.
At some point in their lives, every great leader runs up against one problem that is simply impossible to ignore. How are they going to fund their vision? Today, Errol is offering you a free copy of his first book in the Rising Generation Leadership Series entitled Big Vision, No Money: 5 Keys to Funding Your Vision. In the book, you'll find guidance from some of the great leaders featured on this podcast about the way Christian leaders should think about money and approach their finances. Simply go to www.errollawson.com to download your copy today. Christian coaching is where more and more leaders turn to increase leadership effectiveness and move forward toward their destiny. If you're looking for a great coach who understands ministry leadership and business principles, connect with Errol Lawson. Errol is a member of the John Maxwell Coaching, Speaking, and Training team and has extensive experience in ministry and Christian leadership training. What do you need to take your ministry, business, or personal life to the next level? Errol can help you refocus, meet a challenging goal, reconnect with your passion for ministry, navigate a transition, or bring balance to your life.
Hello and thank you for joining us on the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast today. With me, Errol Lawson, and my very special guest today is my dear friend, Dr. Ashesi Ansah. Ashesi Ansah is the founding partner and the current CEO of Access Human Capital based in Accra in Ghana. She's managed Access Human Capital since 2008. In addition to that, she's an assistant professor at Ashesi University College, where she teaches classes including leadership, negotiation, and human resource management in the business administration department. Behind her love for teaching and facilitating students' self-discovery journeys, Ashesi is highly engaged in various initiatives in her academic community, leading to several awards. She serves as a patron for a number of student organizations and was voted by students as the most inspiring faculty member in 2010, and also has the outstanding faculty member in 2008, 2010, and twice in 2011. In 2012, she was voted by students as the most resourceful faculty member. Dr. Ashesi Ansah, that's an illustrious biography. let me take the chance of asking you to fill in any gaps. There's anything I've missed out in your bio there, actually. First of all.
Thanks a lot for the opportunity, Errol. And let's see, what's not on there is I enjoy working. Well, I guess it said it. I do enjoy working with young people a lot. Um, I love to travel. So I like to explore. I see myself as a global citizen, so I like to explore the world around me. And I enjoy doing a few daring things. I recently climbed Mount Kilimanjaro and
Wow.
was, raising funds for a project. So I like to do a few crazy things here and there.
Wow. And give us a glimpse as to what you're up to at the moment in life, what you're doing right now.
Right now, I've got my hands in many things, but the three main things I would say is one, I'm teaching at Ashesi University, and my focus has shifted from all my other classes to leadership. So now I pretty much teach only leadership. And then I'm still running Axis. I'm trying to give it more time this year. And so we're looking at new business lines. We're doing more of career coaching. We're doing a lot more of, just differentiating our services a little bit more. And then I have AGE, the Association of Ghana's Elders, and getting more and more involved in that. And so we're trying to elevate it. We have an autobiography project going on where, a lot of our senior citizens sometimes pass away and we realize we haven't captured their life stories and leadership lessons. And so with this project, one of the things we're doing is setting up book clubs for senior citizens and then starting an autobiography project where we're helping them capture their stories. So those are three major things that I'm focused on right now.
Awesome. I know most of our listeners today are going to be either established leaders or emerging Christian leaders, and they're on a journey and they're trying to figure out like how do they move forward. They're hungry for growth. They're hungry for just to be able to make greater impacts. So we're really interested to get some of your take on the whole topic of leadership. And just starting off though, how did you know that what you're doing now is what God wanted you to do, that He called you to be doing what you're doing right now? Tell us that story.
I come from a family of teachers. My father was a professor at the University of Ghana. My mother, at some point in her life, taught. My grandparents were teachers. And so, growing up, I would always rally the kids in the neighborhood, across the street and help them with their homework. And I was constantly meddling, meddling as in pulling them out. And it doesn't matter what you're doing, come and sit down. And then I'd, by force, help them with their homework, teach them, etc. And so I found teaching at a very early age and I enjoyed it. This is from like maybe class 5, so 5th grade. And over time, that interest grew, and I started doing more structured, proper institutional teaching. So I grew into it. And on the stuff that I do, where career coaching, helping people to find jobs, polish their CVs, brand themselves properly, I actually started that in my church. I used to live in the US, and I was in a church that was full of young people. And I used to teach at the university while I was a student, a PhD student in New Jersey. And a lot of times, many of the young people at church would come, Ansah, could you please help me with my CV? I'm going for an interview. Can you help me with this? And over time, I realized, look, a lot of the young people need direction, whether it's job market, etc. And I was, always ready and willing to help. So I even started workshops on career planning, etc. And as I visited Ghana on and off, I realized, look, what I'm doing in the US is even more needed here.
Right.
And so I moved into thinking about what I could do here, and it still had to do with helping young people to transition from the academic environment into the world of work and back and forth. And so, starting with that eventually grew. And one of the things I believe in is I meet young people who say, I want to run my own business. I want to do my own stuff. I want to be an entrepreneur. And sometimes they don't realize it's not just about going and doing your own thing. It's about what is that one thing that you can't do without? That one thing that you want to do, even if it seems like a hobby or it's just a passion. Then you take that and build a business around it. So it's not just blank, let me go find something to do and then do some buying and selling retail here and there, etc. But it's what is my passion? And then how do I build a business around that passion? And that is how I've practically gone into both teaching and the other stuff that I do.
Sounds good. And was there like a turning point for you on your leadership journey? Was there ever like an epiphany moment where maybe you were going in one direction and something happened, God spoke, an event happened and caused you to change direction completely? Can you tell us that story?
I don't have a story that may fit into the going in one direction and making a U-turn. But
or a left turn,
one
or
of
a
the
right turn.
things one of the things that for me was significant was a point where I kind of my identity was affirmed. Now, specifically, I lived in Chicago in 2011. No, 2001, sorry. And so 9/11, we all know what happened,
Right.
the hijacked plane, etc. At that point, I'd finished all my classes and I was still, in school doing only my thesis, so just research. And I had a very busy thesis supervisor. And so we scheduled it and so that through the summer, etc., I was still in school. And when 9/11 happened in September, the US Immigration Services, they set up Homeland Security, and then they asked every international student if you weren't taking full-time classes, and I was doing just research, by the way, if you weren't taking full-time classes, you were illegal. And they gave us a date by which you had to either regularize your stay or leave the country. The deadline was supposed to be November 6th. And that was one of the most harrowing experiences where, you're wondering. I went to the school and I said, look, I have just my thesis left. Could you regularize, what can you do? And they were very, well, there's nothing we can do. That's all you have left. You don't have additional classes. And so at that point, it was what do you call it? A crisis that could have gotten me, the advice around me could have gotten me to go in a direction that was, okay, here you are, you're almost stranded. And, people get married to folks for green cards. So I got all sorts of suggestions. Why don't you go do this, green card, whatever, whatever. Why don't you go into nursing? It's easier to get in and easier to get a green card. Why don't you? All sorts of options. And for me, that was very significant in my life because at that point, my identity as a child of God was on the line. And the stakes were very, very high. And it was either you have values, compromise them, God will understand. Charlie, you're in a sticky situation. So this is the point where make that decision, go do this whole papers, etc. And at the time, my boss really, really liked me. And she was practically offering me her job. She was leaving and she said, look, I want you to run this agency. I was teaching in an adult learning center. And I told her, well, the process to go through for, regular legal papers is a little too long. And practically, I don't plan staying in the US. I'm going back home. And so the options were go back to my boss, pretend that I was going to be staying and use the opportunity to get that job and get, an H-1B visa and still be, stay in the US, even though I knew I wanted to leave and go and do my PhD. Or do this whole marriage thing. But long story short, it shook me and made me, it put my identity as a Christian on the line, and I had to take a decision that said, look, God brought me here and he saw this coming and he still allowed it. And so we're going to do it his way. So eventually people ask me why I got 2 masters. That's the story behind it. I was almost done with one master's. And the only other way for me to stay legitimate was to get into another program, which thankfully had rolling deadlines. So, rolling application timeline, I hadn't missed any deadline. So, right there in Chicago, I went to DePaul and I wanted to study public service. So, I figured, you know what? Let me enter it maybe a little sooner than I planned. And then they, approved it,
Wow.
reinstated me, so I was legal. And this happened in September. The deadline was November. By January, I was reinstated and I started school. So I actually
Wow.
did the last part of my first master's and the beginning of the second one. There was an overlap. That was, God worked that out, and it taught me a major lesson. Know who you are. You're a child of God. When everybody in the world is going in one direction and they're leading in that direction, do not.
It's great.
And that really affirmed who I was as a child of God, and I think it made all the difference, in my life from that time on.
Wow. It's great, man.
Are you seriously fired up about growing as a leader in business or church-based ministry? Are you feeling somewhat frustrated about not having realized your full potential in what you've been called to do? Could you do with someone to help you get some extra clarity or to be a sounding board for your plans and ideas? Great athletes have coaches, so do great leaders. The right leadership coach for you will result in an increased sense of clarity, direction, and purpose, dramatically increasing the results you achieve. If you're ready to step up, contact Errol to book a free, no-obligation introductory coaching session and see whether Errol is the right coach for you. Errol takes the lessons learned from his own leadership journey and from his extensive research to help leaders and entrepreneurs to step into their biggest challenges and rise to their next level. Email admin@errollawson.com right now to schedule your call.
And what's been your biggest challenge as a leader so far? I'm sure there've been plenty.
Yeah. I think the biggest is, I've grown up and live in a context where age is everything. So the child is not really the opinion of a child is not that valued compared to an older person. And for me, it's been being put in situations where I'm leading people older than myself. And the challenge there of having to manage certain conversations, having to manage, you find that fine line between deferring to them and also making sure that you're making a case that may not be something they favor. And it's always been a challenge, but thank God he gives us wisdom in a time of need, where the words you use, the way you relate to people comes in handy. But generally, I've been in, I can think of specific situations where just starting and managing and steering a conversation where you're dealing with adults who feel, this young person, what does she know? And, being nice and polite and still managing to get things done, even if they don't particularly like it. And that's been, it's a challenge that comes and goes because of the context I live in.
Can you give us is there a particular example you can give us of a time when you had that challenge?
I'm in a group where a conversation sprang up, and I needed to get some of the older people to kind of see the point of view of others without shutting them down. And it was very sensitive because these were people not just senior to me, but these are leaders on multiple levels. And I ended up having to do a lot of, in the open we're talking and you're steering the conversation, and then I had to call a few individuals, behind the scenes, and something that I've done quite a number of times. So call somebody and say, you know what, I understand what you're saying, and I know you want to go in this direction, but it's really essential that because of the influence you have, you're more careful. And so, how about we do it this way? Do you think this could work? That could work? And then get them to begin, reasoning differently. And then you come back to the group, everything is,
Yeah,
seems
yeah.
fine and settled, and we all move on. And you're doing a lot of behind the scenes, talking to
Political
people.
leadership. It's
Well,
good.
we've had to do some of that along the way.
It's good. It's good. So at this stage in your journey now, having accomplished what you have, how do you now define success?
I keep it simple. For me, success is two things. Taking care of the cross. And when I say that, I mean, when you look at the cross, you have the vertical and then the horizontal. And for me, success is really adding value wherever I find myself, right? And that's the horizontal, wherever I find myself adding value, and then making sure that that adding of value honors God. And for me, that's success. So it has everything to do with me being a teacher, for example. I see the classroom as my mission field, right? And if I'm able to add value to the lives of my students, where besides teaching, I do a lot of counseling and coaching, and sometimes they come, we have a conversation, they go away, and it's wow, thank you. I met recently, I was talking to one of my former students, and she said one particular conversation, and I remember it very well. We sat in my car for about 3 hours talking, and that changed her life and the choices that she made. When I look at that and I see how I added value and how through that conversation she even became closer to God. So one, I added value. Two, it honored the Lord. And for me, that is success. So for me, it's really just very, very simple. Can I, or am I adding value, and does it please God? And that's it. If the answer to both is yes, then I can consider myself successful in whatever that endeavor is.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it was John Maxwell that said that success, or the secrets of success, can be found in your daily routine. What does the first 90 minutes of your day typically look like?
All right. So once I wake up, and I don't have, waking up depends on when I go to bed, but I try to, regardless of what time I'm waking up, to stick to that routine. First is my eyes pop open, and I have my devotional right there. So do the stretching and all that stuff when you don't want to get out of bed. You push the alarm, snooze it a little bit, and then eventually, when that snaps, I do have my quiet time. And in 1992, I was at a leadership camp. It was a youth leadership camp for SU, Scripture Union Youth. And I learned a lesson there from one of the facilitators, Reverend Steve Asante. And he had a book he had written at the time called NBNB, No Bible, No Breakfast. And it pretty much said, look, if you haven't fed your soul, which is the most crucial part of you, don't feed your body. So over the years, it's become part of the routine.
It's great.
Wake up, morning devotion. And after that, I tend to keep my phone with me in bed, mainly because I use the alarm on the phone. And so it's morning devotion, and then turn on the radio when I'm done. And actually, when I wake up, I turn on the radio because there are a few stations where there isn't much talk going on. It's just gospel music, worship music. And it creates the right kind of environment for me. And then I, roll from morning devotion, take a shower, etc., and then plunge into work. Sometimes, depending on what my agenda looks like, I actually start work in bed. When I'm done with the devotion, I have the music playing in the background, get on the laptop, try and finish something that I didn't finish, take a shower, and then get into the office and start my day properly. But that takes up a good chunk of my morning. Yeah.
Awesome. And what other key habits have you had to kind of adapt into your life in order for you to get to where you are today?
I used to struggle with keeping my tasks organized, and thank God for smartphones. I now, as soon as I need to do something, first place I go is I get it on my Google Calendar, and it's synced to my phone. So when I wake up, actually, all I have to do is I pick up the phone once I'm done with my morning devotion, etc., and I look at the agenda for the day. Right? What is it that I need to do, etc. But it's on the phone. And one of the things I found very helpful, it makes me more organized, is if I'm talking to you and you say, hey, can we do this? Can we do that at that time? If I don't put it on the Google Calendar, like if I don't type it in right away, the likelihood that I'll forget it, I'll miss it, etc., is high. But as soon as I put it there, it serves as a check and a balance for me, to figure out, okay, I get in there, I realize, tomorrow is loaded, I can't do this. That's the whole balancing act. Or I get in there and I put it in, and it means that there's an alarm on the phone that will go off, And so I use technology a lot to my advantage, to keep myself on track. Sometimes when I've been, productive, it's been with fixing a routine, and the routine is not just work, but eating and sleeping. I can't say I have great habits when it comes to that, but the times when I've been consistent and not been irregular, I've noticed the difference, where I'm fueled and I'm able to keep going, etc. So those are some of the habits that are great to have. And actually, one thing that has made me productive in the last, and this is something in the last maybe 3-4 years of teaching, I use a timer in my class.
Okay.
To time students. You have a presentation, 10 minutes, it goes off. And I have it on my phone as well, and it's been extremely helpful in my own personal life. I get distracted easily where I'm doing something and I remember, oh, I should have sent this person an email. Then I stop what I'm doing and I move to go send the mail. Before I finish the mail, I realize, oh no, I should have called this person, and then I switch. And so using the timer, I force myself to work in chunks of 20 to 30 minutes. So sometimes I set it for 20 minutes, other times for 30. And it's a daily occurrence where I set it and I tell myself, until the alarm goes off, I am not stopping whatever I'm doing.
Right.
When the alarm goes off, if I still need more time, I reset it for another 20 minutes. If I realize I'm getting distracted, I start looking forward to the end of the alarm, meaning I'm still working. But when the alarm goes off, I take a quick break, stretch or go send that email or whatever, and then I come back. It's been helpful even in prayer, where there are times when, there's the spontaneous prayer, and then there's the prayer where you actually make time to sit with God. And sometimes you're praying and your mind wanders off to the things you have to do, etc., etc. So I started setting a timer. So I'll set the timer and I say, okay, for the next 30 minutes, no distractions. I'm praying. When the alarm goes off, then I can decide to either, wrap it up or keep going. But until the alarm goes off, no distractions. And it's been extremely helpful. If I'm to list one particular habit that's been helpful, I think that'll be it, using the timer. So I have it all. And I've changed about 5 timers. The only downside is it's the ticking, like a kitchen timer, egg timer. And a lot of times people borrow it because they see me use it in sessions and class, and they twist it the opposite direction. So I have about 5 that have been destroyed by other people. So now all I did was to get a timer app on my phone.
Okay.
So that I don't have to deal with somebody winding it the opposite direction and breaking it. And it's still been absolutely effective.
That's great. So what's your biggest weakness as a leader?
I'm a great starter and a terrible finisher. Finishing, getting things completed is something that I struggle with. And I think it's mainly because I take on a lot. So I'm constantly juggling different things. And I end up with, a lot of things started, but, I haven't finished many of them. So incomplete here, incomplete there. And it's sometimes just because I have too many things on my plate, and I'm unable to. And one of the things I've done to help me work on that, and that has been the most successful, is I staff my weaknesses.
Right.
I surround myself with people who complement me. And so in Access, for example, I have a lady called Kafri, and she does a fantastic job of finishing stuff. She's a finisher.
Right.
And so when I surround myself with people like that, whether they are junior to me, peers, it helps me to get things done. So I
Right.
start and I can hand it over and then have them take it through to the end.
It's great.
Right. So I figured out how
Staffing
to work
our
better.
weaknesses. It's great. And
Yes.
what's your biggest strength?
I think my biggest strength, well, I was struggling between two things, but I love to grow people. I'm a great starter and very creative in getting people to see opportunities, self-discover. That's the word, yeah. So I'm great at helping people to self-discover and getting, using very creative ways of getting to people, so getting people to sit and do an assessment, an honest, candid assessment of themselves, identify their areas of growth and strength and weaknesses, challenges, and helping them work through it. I'm great at doing that. And then I'm also really good at there's a lot of creativity in me. So being able to get things started and being able to sit with one idea, you ask me, oh, Issy, I want to do this. Could you help me think about it? In a few minutes, I can think through it, come up with all sorts of ways of doing it that are exciting. I do a good job of that. Right? And then I need to find finishers to finish it.
And at the beginning of your leadership journey, when you were just setting out, if anything, what was holding you back from going into leadership?
I think I can't think of. I've grown up where leadership has been thrust upon me,
Right.
and so when I was in secondary school, we select prefects, right? And so there's Form 1 to 5, and then sixth form, lower 6, upper 6. When I was in all through my Form 1 to 5, I'd been in leadership roles where others pushed me to the front and said, hey, she can do this one. And then I got volunteered into stuff. And I remember in sixth form when they were selecting house prefects for the residential halls. I was in a boarding school. I wasn't even physically there. Some of us had been called to go do something. And so I was away. And when I came, they told me, hey, 98% of the people voted for you, so you're the new house prefect. So I've been in situations where leadership has been thrust upon me. So I guess it doesn't give me time. I've had fears and concerns, but it hasn't given me time to hold back and sit back. But perhaps in certain particular instances, what has held me back has been, can I do this? My plate is already full. Can I add this? So it's been more of a capacity issue. And sometimes it's recently, just about a few months ago, about 3 months ago, I was part of a meeting, people who are senior to myself in academia and everything. And we had to put together a steering committee and find somebody to lead that. And unanimously, they just selected me, and I really wanted to protest. I wanted to say, look, my hands are full. I guess learning to say no is important. But it was so unanimous, and I'd been adding a lot of value. So I told myself, okay, let me take this on and go and figure out how to balance other things, and prioritize. But I think it's capacity. That's what holds me back generally.
And it's probably someone listening right now is feeling the same way, Maybe there's an opportunity in front of them, and, someone said to me once, if you can't see it in your mind yet, then you'll never see it in reality. And maybe that's because they're feeling like they've got the capacity to do it. What would you say to that person right now?
I'd say it's important to one, prioritize. And hard as it is, learning to say no is really important. Um, so there are times when you have to say no and give people a way out. So hey, could you take this on? Could you add this to your load? And you say, you know what? I can't do it right now. However, in 2 months or whenever it is, you can, I mean, be realistic. So you delay that.
Right.
That's one option. One
Right.
of the things I've learned to do in this particular case, I was actually interested in the organization and all that stuff. But what I've learned to do is, you know what, I'd have loved to do this, but I can't. However, let me talk to ABC. I refer them to other people so that I don't feel guilty for leaving them in the lurch. But I give them a way out. I give them somebody else who can help. And other times, I have to close my eyes and say, you know what? I am sorry, but no can do. And so sometimes, I mean, when people are coming at you and you know your capacity, you know, look, this is not something I can do effectively if I take it on. Send them to other people, give them other options, and just stick to it.
It's good. And we're almost rounding up now, I see. Who have been your most significant mentors on your leadership journey?
Okay. Let me share a quick story and I'll give you the names of those people. I one day walked into church and it was one of those mornings where I was feeling down. I didn't even feel like going to church that morning. I was like, oh, I dragged myself in. And then an older friend, a gentleman, saw me and he called me. I was like, hey, come, what's wrong with you? I was like, oh, I'm tired, I'm frustrated, da, da, da. So I vented. And he asked me, do you have mentors? And I said, yeah, there are people I talk to, etc. And he said, let me teach you something. You must have a Paul, have a Barnabas, and have a Timothy. And that made such a difference, that conversation, where he said, there's always got to be that Paul, a senior person. They've walked this road before, they can give counsel, etc., etc. Make sure you always have a Paul. And at that time, he felt, you know, if I had somebody like that, I was consistently going to, that would be great. And then have a Barnabas, have a peer mentor, somebody you check on each other. When Paul was doing a lot of his work, Barnabas was his, you know, fellow, what do you call it, worker in the field, and they were supporting each other, etc. And he said, have a Barnabas and have a Timothy and somebody who keeps you on your toes, you know, where you're pouring into their lives and that gives you accountability. One, in fact, I can think of multiple people who served as mentors in my life in different capacities or along different dimensions. There's Auntie Joyce, Dr. Joyce Ai, and she's been, I mean, absolutely phenomenal. I admire her a lot. She was a family friend growing up. And so as an adult, it's been just building that relationship. She keeps tabs on me. And sometimes it's a matter of checking on me and saying, hey, I can see you spinning round and round. You're doing too much. You need to slow down. I may call her and say, look, Auntie Joyce, I have to make this decision and I'm struggling. I'm not sure which way to go. And one of the things I love about her, she never tells me what to do. She asks me questions and lead me to my answer. So she coaches me.
Right.
And that becomes grateful. There's Albert Okran, same approach. So I enjoy working with coaches, you know, because at the end of the day, they lead you to find your answer, and they've been absolutely phenomenal.
Brilliant.
And then one person who's been a peer mentor, my Barnabas, a friend of mine called Kofi, and man, the two of us, I benefit so much from our friendship where I need to run something by somebody. Yesterday, I was frustrated with something. I quickly shot him a quick WhatsApp message. I was like, dude, I'm thinking of this and this and that, and I'm frustrated by that and that. What do you think I need to do? He asked me a few questions. Have you done this? Have you tried this? By the end of that quick chat, I was feeling better, and I had a little more clarity on what I needed to do next. And so, I believe life is like a relay race. And so there are times when somebody steps into your life, and perhaps the blessing of their mentorship lies in financially and vocationally how you're managing yourself. And they help you to a certain point, and then they hand over the baton. So there's seasons in life. At this season, perhaps what I need most is somebody to help me think about my profession. And so that mentor at this season helps me to a certain point and hands over the baton where I may enter a season where it's family, marriage, right? And there's somebody who God brings into my life who speaks to my situation. So we go through phases. And so I wouldn't say I have one mentor who's always been, for the last whatever number of years, has always been. But in terms of significant contribution and adding value to my life, these are some of the people I can mention.
So tell me the names again. So it was Auntie Joyce.
Yes, Auntie Joyce, Kofi Asumeni,
Okay.
and then
Albert.
Albert Okun, yeah.
So tell me what from just each of those three people, what's the most significant piece of advice they've each given you? So Auntie Joyce first.
I remember when I moved back to Ghana and we had a conversation. So this is about maybe 7 years ago. And my father used to be a professor at the university, and he trained a lot of the journalists. And when I came, a lot of people were suggesting, why don't you, kind of step in your father's shoes and, you write very well. Why don't you write? Why don't you do this? I had a TV station wanting me to come and host a program. I spoke to Auntie Joyce about it, and she said, look, do not ever live out other people's vision for your life.
Wow.
People will look at you and say, hey, you're good at this, you're great at that, so why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? The suggestions will come. When people realize you're good at something, they will have a vision for you.
Wow.
In their mind, this is where your life should go. Never, ever live out anybody's vision for you. It's you and God. That's it.
Awesome.
Right. And that absolutely changed the way I saw stuff, because I had a lot of opportunities coming my way. And because I had just moved back, and you want to help, you want to support, you want to do this, you want to do that, it quickly gave me focus. Where I'd look at something and say, that was my father, that is not me. He was a journalist, I am not. And so I can't step into those shoes. That's not my vision for me. That's not God's vision for me either. So it helped me to say no. Albert, my God, a lot of times he forces me to think. And most of in fact, I think the different pieces of advice will culminate in him basically saying, be realistic. A lot of the advice he gives me comes down to, look, be realistic, be realistic. Are you sure you can do this? Don't bite more than you can chew. You can't. Recently, I was having a chat with him about a week ago, and there was something I wanted to do. I was like, I want to do this and I want to do that. And I've put all this. And he was like, look, I'm giving you 2 weeks. I'm sure we'll have this conversation again. And I'm sure you wouldn't have been able to finish ABC because I know you. And so be realistic from the beginning and don't try to do more than you can do. Plan, etc. Be realistic. And that keeps me on my toes and wakes me up, because sometimes I'm an idealist. I love to think I can save the world, and I want to do everything. So it's always helpful having someone like him to slow me down and say, look, be realistic. And then Kofi, I don't know, his is just a wonderful support system. Where if I think of the advice that comes through most often, it probably has to do with he kind of affirms me.
Okay.
Right? You know what? I know you want to do this now, and it's good. I actually like the fact that you're thinking of this. However, you need to look at this other side. So his is, and especially with him, in fact, these are all very, very serious, mature Christians. That's one thing they all have in common, right? So they always drive me back to, okay, after all said and done, what does God want? Kofi does a lot of that. And it's balancing strategy with faith. So a lot of times it's, look, have you prayed about this? What do you sense you need to do? What have you put down as a strategy? And so it's balance. Find the balance between applying faith and being strategic and getting things done. Yeah, I think that would sum up a lot of
Awesome.
the lessons I've learned from them.
Brilliant, man. And what's the one thing you're most fired up about right now?
My age project. I founded the Association of Ghana's Elders, and it's taken on a life of its own. Where I mentioned the autobiography project, it's just what we've started with, but that's not the entire focus. It's really to rally senior citizens where we serve as a voice, and it's not just a social support system, but economically figure out how to help them integrate into the system, etc. I mean, it's a huge undertaking, and I feel God is leading me further and further in that direction. It's a ministry for me now, and I find it interesting that I love working with young people, and the burden on my heart now is for older people. Where senior citizens who are often neglected, etc., and setting up institutional support systems, advocacy, etc. And it's taken up, it's grown and taken up significance in my life that I didn't imagine. I thought, it's a project, we're doing it, and, but it's become something that I've recognized as part of my purpose on this planet. So that's what I'm actively working on now.
Brilliant. And Essie, I guess lastly, if you could tell us, how do we find out more about you? How can we get in touch with you? Do you have any resources you can point us to?
There's a personal website that is still being worked on, but through my company's website, accesshcl.com. So A, X as in X-ray, I, S as in Samuel, H, C as in capital, L.com, accesshcl.com. We actually have a career center where we have CV guidelines. We're loading up coaching documents, just helping people to think through their careers, etc.
Okay.
And those are some of the tools that I use in the work that I do, that I share online for people to get access to. I have a blog where I do I'm quite a bit of a socio-political activist, let's say a social activist. And I blog about issues around me, raise questions, sometimes share information. And so online, between my blog and the usual social media outlets, I find myself in those spaces. And one blog that may be of interest it's called Soul Kitchen. And this is soulkitchen.blogspot.com. And this is where I share Rima. I've kept that site for quite a while, for many years. And whenever I feel God is teaching me something, one of my favorite books, in fact, the one book that I recommend anybody who wants to be a serious leader is the book of Nehemiah. I've learned a lot about prayer, strategy, planning, working with other people, teamwork. I mean, it's phenomenal. I don't think there's any management book that can ever, for me, compare to the book of Nehemiah.
That's great.
So a lot of times when I read stuff like that, or I'm having devotional on Samson, I did that, I think it was in October or November, and I learned so many amazing practical lessons, and I post them. So I share those things so that other people can also read, gain their own insights, etc., etc. And you find more of me on there with poetry and stuff.
Is that a book you'd recommend to a leader right now?
Yes. You want to be a good leader. It's not just about being a leader, being a good leader.
Yeah.
The book of Nehemiah in the Bible, whether you're a Christian or not,
Yes.
this is not just for, oh, you're Christians who read it now. You can be of any faith or of no faith. But once you get the book of Nehemiah, you realize, look, strategic planning is key to leadership. Building a team and, working with others and knowing when to speak and when to be silent. When you have opposition, how do you deal with the opposition? How do you keep working, hard work? I mean, man, don't get me started with Nehemiah. There's a lot in there that anybody can learn.
It's great, man. Essie, thank you so much for your time today. I know that people have been encouraged and inspired by your story and your journey from the very beginning of just pursuing God and wanting to serve God, and that situation in America where you have to choose, do I compromise myself or do I stay true to who God is, and God coming through for you and that change. There's so much in your story. Thank you for your openness today. Thank you for your candidness. And God bless you in all that you do, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Errol, and God bless the work that you're doing as well. Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us today on the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast. I pray you've been inspired, you've been lifted, you've been encouraged to take your personal leadership to the next level. We really encourage you guys to just take action, make it happen, do something, start somewhere, go out and change the world in some way, big or small. Guys, if you've enjoyed the podcast today, please share with your friends, share with your loved ones, your colleagues, someone out there you think might benefit from hearing this great content. And if you want some more questions answering, you got a question, email me, Errol@errollawson.com. Or if you want a free 30 to 45 minute coaching session with myself around a leadership challenge or issue you're working on in your business, your church, or in your organization, please feel free to email me right away or get you booked in. It's Errol@errollawson.com. Thank you again for listening. Go to our iTunes page, check it out, check out the previous episodes. Give us a nice review, that would be awesome. Really appreciate if you could do that for us. We really appreciate you just for being here and listening. Thank you so much. God bless you, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Rising Generation.